Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast. There's no guest today, it's just me. They've actually let me do one on my own. And the main reason for that is, of course, this is a review of the Wimbledon game, and the rest of the Daily Newcastle podcast team are still out partying, and I wasn't invited. I was sent home to work and do this for you. But of course I don't mind. We love bringing you daily content here at the Daily Newcastle podcast. So yes, it's something we love to do, and it's something we're going to do. It will be a bit of a shorter episode. Again, it's only me. You probably don't want to listen to me harp on for too long anyway. So I'm sure you guys won't be too bothered listening that it's a bit of a shorter episode. Just before we start, this podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. So, as I was saying, it is the review of a Wimbledon game. Newcastle United won that game 1-0. A bit of a strange one, really, for me, and I think a lot of fans. I guess overall, we dominated the game. I mean, 18 shots to 2. They had 0 on target. We had about 80% of the ball. I think we had 730 passes. They had 199. So yeah, it was domination statistically, but it was only 1-0, and we didn't even score from open play. It took a penalty, won by Miggy Almiron and converted by Fabian Schär. Coolly, I might add. It was a very, very cool, calm Swiss penalty, which is what we've come to expect from Fabian Schär. But yeah, like I say, it wasn't... I don't really know what to think of it. I guess in one half, I'm thinking we're through. We did dominate the game statistically, but again, the other half of me is a little bit, well, we didn't score from open play, which is a little bit worrying, I guess. But I mean, Wimbledon sat very deep and didn't really attempt to score. It's almost like they were waiting to just try and stay in the game, wait for the final 5 minutes, and then try and nick a goal. I mean, that's exactly what Newcastle used to do under Steve Bruce. So I think a lot of us in the stadium recognised the tactic pretty well. But yeah, I guess where I want to start is probably the lineups. I mean, again, Newcastle United did mix it up quite a bit. Lloyd Kelly came in at left back. Dubravka was in goal. Kraft did come in. A lot of the guys on the pod yesterday were saying that Kraft might come in. I didn't think he would change the defence too much, but there was, again, 3 out of 4 changes in the back line, or 4 out of 5 if you include Dubravka. It was a midfielder, Joe Longstaff, Willock with Barnes, Asuda and Almiron as a front three. So it was still a half-strong team. You look at players like Tino, who have started a couple of league games this season. Harvey Barnes is in form. Joe Linton, again, very much a first-teamer. It was mixed. And then obviously at half-time, we saw a bit of Oddie. I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname at ridiculous o'clock at night after a game. And a bit of a sore throat, but we saw Oddie, the new Greek goalkeeper. Dan Burn came on, of course. So did Lewis Hall. Bruno, I thought Bruno looked great when he came on, but again, it's against a weaker opposition. Maybe he should. And Gordon as well came off the bench. So it was interesting. I think a lot of the bench players, in particular Gordon and Bruno, were probably just getting some extra minutes in, how maybe wanting some higher fitness levels ready for hopefully that intense press again against Everton coming up in the Premier League. So like I say, the team sheet was I quite liked it, and again, the guys on the pod were saying in the group chat they liked the lineup as well, and they were really happy about it. So I think we maybe just expected a little bit more. I think players like Willock really and Miggy in particular should have really been trying to make a statement today. Or yesterday, sorry, when you're listening, should have really been trying to make a statement yesterday. So for me, I think they probably haven't done enough to convince Eddie that they're ready to compete for starting places just yet. And I'll be amazed if it's a different starting 11 from what City was for when we play Everton. So I think a lot of them kind of did fail to make an impression. I think one I was quite impressed with, and he played a couple of roles tonight actually, was Lloyd Kelly. Started at left back, moved left centre half. I thought his distribution was fantastic. Big switching, diagonal passes. Again, a couple to Miggy, which he controlled pretty well. To be fair, Miggy had a nice chance in the first half, but he just absolutely smashed it over the bar with no composure. And again, you're thinking, is it just lack of game time? Is it a little bit of complacency kicking in where they're thinking, well, it's Wimbledon, we're going to win? So yeah, I think that's part of it. I think overall, I'm going to try and be positive about the game. I do believe there is positives. Like, I think last night was a fantastic setup for the Everton game. I think Everton will sit deep. They will try and hit us on the break. Not that Wimbledon tried to hit us on the break, but Everton certainly will sit deep. And again, we've got to overcome that issue, which we spoke about on the Tuesday podcast, where it's a case of, can we break down a team which sit deep? The answer last night was no, really, which is quite disappointing when you think about, the standard of opposition. It's a little bit disappointing, but we couldn't really score an open play, and we had a couple of half chances, but again, nothing too serious. Lastly, I just want to kind of mention Asula. I think he did look very raw. Great work rate. He's very willing to run in behind, very willing to keep making them runs. He just wasn't being found, but I think part of that maybe isn't against his ability, but potentially against building up some partnerships in the team. Obviously, it's his kind of first proper amount of minutes, so it's a case of, again, is he stuck in terms of not having that connection with players? So yeah, that was quite interesting as well. I'd love to kind of find out what you guys thought of the game, really, the fellow Newcastle fans and people listening, because, like I say, it's a funny one. Statistically, we did dominate, but again, it took a penalty. Yeah, not hugely convincing, really, but it takes a penalty. On the other hand, to that, though, I do think that if we didn't get a penalty, I think Bruno, Gordon, and then when they came on, probably would have been a lot more intense. I think there was an element towards the end of that game of don't get injured. There was a couple of players who went down, and it was a period of, please don't be injured. I think Fabian Shaw was quite a concern at one point. Anthony Gordon went down towards the end. Didn't look serious at all. They both got back up and both carried on absolutely fine. Shaw got subbed off eventually. But yeah, I think there was an element of, let's not get injured now. We've got the lead. We don't need to do too much. Wimbledon don't look threatening at all. Like I say, no shots on target. So I think that might have played a part as well. And I think we do have to be positive. At the end of the day, we're still in the cup. We do have Chelsea at home, which, it's a home draw, so we should be happy with that. But again, it's not exactly an easy draw. But being a Newcastle fan, listen to this, you'll completely understand. We don't get any easy draws anymore. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, I guess there's positives there. It was the other positive for me as well. It was good preparation for Everton. Something which I'm really intrigued to see now that we didn't quite break Wimbledon down how we would have liked. I think Everton might learn quite a bit from that performance, which could also be a worrying thing. But I'm sticking it as a positive that we get to go back to the drawing board and we get to come and hit Everton on the break. But I'm sure, again, in future podcasts, again, on the crossover and on the preview for Friday, we'll be discussing all of that in a little bit more detail. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the cup game. That's something which, again, I think there's plenty there to be positive about, but again, it's a little bit worrying. Why can't we break teams down who sit deep against us? Wasn't a particularly strong team, but I think we'd still expect to score at least one from open play with the team which started. So yeah, let us know what you think. Like I say, it's a short one today. It is just me. You don't want to listen to me harp on. This is being recorded very late at night, as you can imagine. So yeah, apologies if it's not bringing the normal upbeat energy you used to. Wildcard Wednesday will be back next Wednesday. As far as I'm aware, we have no midweek reviews. So yeah, we'll be back to normal schedule next week. But yeah, that's just our quick thoughts on the post game. Let us know what you think in the comments. This podcast was brought to you by Zencastr. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, your nose, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr. Thank you very much for listening.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.